you don't know who to trust, and everyone's a suspect. Here on Feature Please, a heinous trip on Warp 5. My name is Joseph.
I could go for a good desert adventure. I'm your co-host, Peter.
Peter, what episode of Star Trek Enterprise did we watch this week?
We're getting into Season 4, Episode 7, The Forge. Not to be confused with La Forge, which, it's not a LeVar Burton.
No, that was last week, and he did a good job.
He let us in. First aired November 19th, 2004. Written by Judith Reeves Stevens and Garfield Reeves Stevens. Directed by Michael Grossman.
Well, at least I now know Tom Clancy's nom de plume. Okay, listen, listener, I stole that joke from Peter from 5 minutes ago, and that's why he's laughing, because it was good, and I stole it in front of him.
Yeah. All this is missing here is crewman Jack Ryan. Actually, it wouldn't be a crewman. This would be like a lieutenant or a...
Yeah, Lieutenant Junior Grade Jack Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on what book, years. Right? Yeah.
Okay. Boy.
Yeah, they're not fucking around, are they?
No, and again, Season 4, what a shame that it started off with that Nazi alien fucking nonsense.
Right. Why couldn't this have been the lead?
Why couldn't this have just been the whole show?
I mean, this is where we've been headed the whole time. This is the conversation I've been waiting for, Peter.
It took too long to get here.
Yeah.
This is a great episode, and I put that picture up on the trauma support group because it ended on a cliffhanger that I haven't felt the urge to watch the next episode that strong in a very long time. And there was some stuff with like the Eric Sunchez.
Yes, Eric Sunchez.
Which is a shame that I didn't think about that until I think we were in the Lower Decks episode. That was good, and that kind of urged me on. This one killed me not to hit the next track. What if, we talk about Discovery and how Discovery was supposed to be an anthology series where each season was its own crew doing its own thing. What if Enterprise was just a collection of story arcs detailing the first voyage of a Starship Enterprise, and arc 1, arc 2 is 2 years later or 6 months later or whatever, and just jump around a timeline and explore these guys. And that's really what Season 4 feels like.
Yeah, the formula they've hit here, wasn't kidding when I said it's perfect for the show, it's perfect for the premise, and boy, they had it in them all along. They just didn't have the right.
They did not have it in them all along.
They didn't have the right creative voice directing them in this way. Like, the talent was there, right? Their actors were good. They just weren't being used. The writers weren't getting focused. They didn't have what they have now.
It's, directors aside, all I'm seeing is new names.
Exactly.
New, it's like, so the talent wasn't there. Berman, Braga, like
the production talent wasn't there. I guess I was basically saying the same thing. There's so many pieces that are on the table that have been on the table for 3 years that aren't the ones that are really to blame for what was going on. And the show, I think, was been unfairly maligned as bad and attributing it to a particular actor or a particular choice in regards to the production, when really it was the fact that the guys who had been doing this since the 1980s were out of fucking gas, out of fucking ideas, and they needed to get the fuck out of Dodge. And the moment that happened and some new blood swept in and took those same pieces, they started making gold in a hurry too.
Again, Manny Cotto, real shame that you and I will never have a chance to, not that we have anybody else worth it at all. Not worth a shit. Anyone else even tangentially associated with these properties, knocking on our door to do interviews. But I would have loved to try and get him on and be like, walk me through what happened in Season 4. Because what I'm seeing right now feels like Manny Cotto, maybe Andrea Boramis, who knows who else. We're sitting in an office and said, okay, listen, we just stole Season 4 from UPN. They didn't want to give it to us. We successfully were able to squeeze a 4th season out. That table over there, or that cork board, has all the big ideas that we wanted to do over the course of 7 seasons of this. And now we've got one more, and we need to say, what are the stories that need to happen? What are the real fucking, what are the stories that we need to tell? And let's bookmark out the time to tell them the right way so everything gets plenty of time to breathe. Plus a fucking stupid time Nazi adventure. And that's what it feels like here, is that these guys just were like, all right, this was supposed to be the season 4 cliffhanger. This is supposed to be the season 5 finale. This is supposed to be that. We're telling all those stories right now, and it's all going to come out great.
What if we had to take the entire planned catalog and just only do the greatest hits? What does that look like? It looks like season 4 of Enterprise.
It looks like that, and it also looks like, going back to season 1 and 2, that you just wasted so much fucking time and opportunity telling bullshit turd stories when you could have been doing this kind of stuff. And what a fucking shame.
It is. It is a shame, and because all of that crap is as bad as it is, remains the hidden diamond in the rough of the Star Trek experience. This is some shit that people just don't know about, still to this day, that season 4 of Enterprise may be the best season of Star Trek ever made.
Not just season 4. I mean, again, go back right into season 3. Season 3's got every right to spread its
From
wings.
Mazzotti Prime on, for certain. For certain.
And getting attention. I would say, we keep coming back to this. What's the right place to get into Enterprise? And I'd say season 3 as a whole. Get a little bit of warm up. Just, hey, here are the characters. Here's a little zany adventure or two or whatever. Minus the fucking bird people episode. Which, even that, like, ridiculous premise, but you still get tastes of what the characters are supposed to be. You can't just go right into intense shit. You need some sort of a basis to understand these characters. And the characters, here we've just watched a amazing episode.
A taut political thriller.
And I still maintain, like, ultimately, compared to the other Star Trek stuff that we've watched, I don't really care about these characters. I'm not sitting on the edge of my seat worried about anybody. I'm not bonding with these guys. Even Voyager, really, the characters worked in my heart better. These guys are kind of cardboard cutouts, but they're telling compelling stories.
I'm starting to care about them more,
yes.
Particularly T'Pol. T'Pol has grown on me significantly through this experience in a way that she never had in my prior Enterprise journeys. I'm appreciating, like, the subtle things that Julie Blaylock attempted to do while portraying her.
Which are lost behind the shadow of her big boobs.
Correct.
And that's, if you're watching this stuff casually and you're not spending an hour dissecting scene by scene stuff, her subtle performances are going to be lost. Same as Trip. That's why nobody gives a shit about Trip when they're talking about the all-time Star Trek greats. It's because he's, emotional, low-key scenes where he's fucking killing it, but it's not super exciting stuff, so it gets lost. As we're sitting here having this conversation, how you get the right people ready to tell the right it's not the right people even. I mean, Berman and Braga could have been telling these same stories if they weren't so fucking burnt out. But you put the right scripts into the machine, whereas the machine are people wearing spacesuits on a spaceship bridge.
Right.
And when you put the material into the machine, the output is Star Trek. And watching the change between season 2 to season 3 and then season 3 into season 4 and how good it is when you do the thing that the people want you to do, it makes me think about Picard.
Of course.
It makes me think about Strange New Worlds specifically, where we had all the discovery and bullshit before it, where you weren't putting the right thing into the machine. There were people in spacesuits on a bridge. The machine was there, but you were pouring fucking monkey wrenches and rocks into this thing.
Right.
And you were getting
to fuck it up as hard as you could.
Clunky turd scripts. And then here comes Strange New Worlds. And now, I don't know if there's a gun to Secret Hideout's head or whatever, But now you put the script where they're doing space adventure and hope and interesting stuff into the machine, and the byproduct was season 1 of Strange New Worlds was great Star Trek, right?
I call it
It's
good Star Trek.
compared to what else we have gotten out
Well,
of
yeah,
new Trek. It's there were some great episodes in there,
phenomenal compared to the most of what's out there.
and it just goes to show that I think if anybody really had done homework, and I understand, like, hey, we're going to do new Star Trek, why go back and rewatch the old stuff? Because this is really just a case study on Star Trek as do the fucking thing that the audience is there for you to do, and the output is exactly what everybody wants.
Yeah, it is a great example of how easy it can be to be this good. And we're going to have a moment of some really laughable CG. We're going to have hell caves. We're going to have budget. We're going to have a lot of scenes that can rely on actors doing shit right into the camera on a close up to sell an abstract concept or an emotional conflict. That's it. That's all we're doing. It's just that craft in the margins. It's not expensive, but it does take skill, right? And we see that.
I'm going to tell you right now, not a single time did I ever consider what the budget was on this episode.
I
Like,
mean,
the
I did with
story
the cloud and the lightning bolts. It crept into my brain. I'm like, oh, there's the limitations. But that's it. It was only for a moment, and then we were past it. It was a plot device.
Well, we're going to open up this one with those very budget caves you were just talking about. And it's a man exploring. I think we're told this is, 17 years prior or something?
Correct.
The dude has gone on an archaeological discovery where he has unearthed the worst, this artifact, right? Which is basically sentient life's worst flashlight to explore a dark cave with. I've seen some really bad flashlights in Star Trek.
The lightsaber flashlight.
It's a lightsaber flashlight, but only a fifth of it is exposed and lit up. And it's this like dark amber color. I don't know if they're worried about attracting like mosquitoes or something. So they're using an off white. And it's dim as fuck. And this dude's just going through these smooth paper mache caves until he comes across some dusty old shit and says, Sirach.
When we cut back, we are actually doing a push and shot of the Vulcan embassy, or I'm sorry, the Earth embassy on Vulcan. Okay, so typically we've been on Earth, we've been in San Francisco, we've talked about the Vulcan embassy on Earth. Roles are reversed. We're pushing it on the Earth embassy on Vulcan. The Vulcan city is around it. Looks a little bit more futuristic.
Did you catch in the background the Starfleet Delta on the windows?
Yeah.
I was like,
it doesn't necessarily mean that was an Earth symbol,
Sure. What are we going to rebrand Starfleet under? I don't know. But, my old apartment had the best window. And I really just, I'd look at it and I'd think Ad Astrata Aspera or whatever.
And we are getting the personal log of Admiral Forrest. Admiral Forrest is narrating, saying he has arrived in Vulcan because he is supposed to be meeting with the Vulcan High Command about the Vulcans and Starfleet having joint missions. So this would definitely be a big deal. This would be Starfleet and Vulcan acting essentially as partners in space, doing missions together. Probably a lot of technology transfers so the two can work together. This would be a big step for Earth. And you must assume that this is happening. This is being considered because of Earth's major success in stopping the Delphic Expanse and the Sphere Builders, which ultimately also helped save Vulcan. So here he is to seal that deal, and he's having a nice walk and talk with Saval in the embassy.
Great episode for Saval.
Fantastic.
The complexity that this episode, and Vulcan stuff was already a real strong point for Enterprise because it portrays a incomplete species, right? And this is something we've come back to a few times, that the Vulcans, as portrayed in Enterprise, have growing up to do. That they need the Federation as much, maybe even more so than Earth does, and what's the journey going to be to get them to this point? And that's very clearly what we're really putting under a microscope here. Sival has gone from being a real cement fuckface to someone who has, stooped down so low as to actually shake Archer's hand and say thank you, right? This dude's
Right.
breaking Vulcan stigma left and right as he broadens his horizons. And that's always a joke with Vulcans, is it doesn't look like much, but in reality, if you know about Vulcan culture, and this dude's, assimilating or diplomatizing left and right here.
I mean,
And
if you know Vulcans, you know that Saval has changed tremendously.
yeah, and this opening scene with Forrest is great because it's Forrest saying, "Oh, hey, I'm so excited. What's the high command going to rule on this?" And we already start laying the groundwork for whatever you thought Suval, whatever juice you thought he had politically, he does not. And at the end of the day, he is the employee of a larger organization. He is not privy to their workings, and he does not agree with all of their decisions, however well he might try to hide that from outsiders. And he's, tells Forrest ultimately, like, we don't know how to handle you. You scare us, and we see a lot of us in you, and we don't know how to figure that out. High command doesn't know how to figure that out.
It starts with we don't understand what box you fit into, but then it goes to what actually the Vulcans' security concern or political concern might be, which is you remind us of us, and we took 1,700 years to rebuild from our self annihilation. And we had to turn ourselves into logic monks to do it. But here you are a century after yours, and you are ready to leapfrog into the unknown in a way that makes us concerned for what will happen in the century to come.
And I really like Forrest's snap reaction to that, which is, we are not the Klingons. You're basically alluding that we will let our emotions get the better of us and that we will be warlike and conquerors and this and that. And, that's not us. Their conversation doesn't get much deeper, though.
So there is what you think, I think, at the beginning is going to be a very minor sort of explosion on the set. There's going to be some kind of attack. Something is going on. There's a very stage actory explosion in the background, and Forrest grabs Saval and basically covers him on the ground. And then after you see this little shitty in-person explosion, they cut to the CG and they Oklahoma City the fucking building. It just whole part of it gets blown off, all the windows get blown out, and it's apparently a big old bomb that has gone off in this embassy.
We had a conversation, maybe it was on Discord, but it was how many Space 911s are there? And I had replied that each franchise gets a Space 911. But Enterprise is quickly proving that it's the exception of the rule, and they get as many Space 911s as Manny Koto feels like.
We were a traumatized nation in 2005.
It
was still it was still on the brain.
That's a valid observation. Is that we call these things Space 911s, but the Xindi initial attack and this, that's right on top of real 911s.
Yeah, it's absolutely part of the reason why they chose this kind of plot. I think actually Oklahoma City is the origin point of a lot of the visuals of the embassy itself after specifically. But terrorism, hot topic, right? So we've had terrorism. We go to Enterprise. There is a game of basketball occurring that is notable for two things. One, apparently Phlox has got a great jump shot and can't miss, so much so that the rest of the crew has to keep trading him off because he's such a ringer. Anytime he has the ball in his hands, he will get it in the hoop. And second, for some reason, they did not let Hoshi wear a bra
Oh, you
Not
noticed that
quite sure.
too.
It was hard not to. That poor
Mm-hmm.
girl.
Mm. Oh, well, hey, at
All
least it
right.
didn't like get blown away in the breeze or whatever.
I mean, it is a step up, but like Linda Park can
Hey, you
catch
know
no
what?
breaks.
At least she's not in a cocktail dress.
But their basketball game gets interrupted by a grim-looking T'Pol who says that she's been contacted by Starfleet, and that's when we are cut back to the NX-01 in orbit of Vulcan, and we find out not only has there been a major bombing of the embassy, Forrest is fucking dead. He's
What?
dead.
What in the fuck?
Were you expecting that? Like, did that hit you hard? Like, what do you mean he's dead?
You don't got the budget for some special effects makeup to put some blood down the corner of his mouth while we get a camera shot of him laying there looking lifeless? Did let's see, who portrays Forrest? What's his name?
Armstrong. Vaughn Armstrong.
Did he get wrapped up in some sort of early 2000s Me Too situation? They just had to write him off super quick and pull an expanse on him.
I mean, I think
I
it's
guess you didn't
just
watch
they
deep
know
enough
they're
into
getting
this.
close to the end of the show. They want Archer to be more in the driver's seat of what happens from this point forward, so you kind of have to get rid of his boss.
Still, though, man, like you could have given this guy
You
a
should have
little
died
bit,
on camera. You should have died
yeah,
on camera. You
or
should
like,
have been like, earn this to like Saval or something like that.
or he could have been, on his deathbed and call Archer and something feels off. Help. So I have a feeling, I don't know, maybe he's supposed to have follow-up scenes. They're like, budget constraints, just cut those scenes. That's going to have to be a good enough exit for him. So what we find out, we got 43 dead. 12 of those are Vulcans. The rest are humans. That there was a big summit that was going on. There was a lot of new people going in and out of the building and high casualties. For whatever reason, Enterprise gets sent out to investigate, which I find it silly that this is the best group of forensic experts that Earth can assemble, or some bubbleheads in a space submarine that have been through trauma after trauma.
You want somebody who's really good at suffering. I'm sure they're on that ship, but
Yeah.
they're not probably the best CSI guys. But whatever,
Hey,
they're
get those
available.
guys that just had to watch someone get infected with mega AIDS and then kicked around by augments. No, yep, send them out.
So when they arrive, first interesting thing that happens is that they are expecting, I would assume, just Saval to come up to Enterprise to talk to them. But instead, when they go to the airlock, it is 3 Vulcans that get out. And immediately, T'Pol is like, her back straightens and she looks very worried. Because it's not any Vulcan who has arrived on the NX-01. No. It is basically the president of all of the Vulcans, Administrator Valas, the head of the Vulcan High Command, who made a point of not telling anybody he was going up to the Enterprise.
Then you've got Admiral Forrest. I'm sorry, then you've got Suval.
You do not have Admiral Forrest. He is dead.
Listen. You might think he's dead, but he's just a fake mustache and a cloak away from being the next villain. All right,
he faked his death to really embrace his true calling of setting stupid traps for Archer.
That's the skit that we should have had opened with.
Damn it!
Admiral Forrest. Admiral Forrest having a conversation with his wife, talking about how he's tired of Starfleet and it's really biting into his true passion of being a bad guy of the week, and that maybe he should look into retiring so he can antagonize John Archer full time.
It's sometimes the gold slips through our fingers, Peter. What can I say?
Yeah. They get into the conference room and they start saying, well, we haven't investigated anything yet because technically the embassy is Earth, soil. And we want you guys to, you space jocks, we want you to come down here and lead the investigation while we, the most logical and best scientists in the galaxy, sit on our fucking hands. Oh, by the way, leading the investigation from our end is this young fella here who I'm going to go ahead and call Detective Guilty. So this dude's sitting there. They might as well just put him in a fucking Romulan uniform. This guy looks shifty as fuck right off the jump. As soon as he's sitting there, I'm like, all right, well, this is the guy that's a bad guy. Like, we got a bad act, not like he's not a bad actor, but he's like acting in bad faith, bad actor. So, red alert there. This will be a good one. And
Their first theory that they offer is that's the Andorians.
I love the racism.
Yeah. And
Just
then
blame the fucking Andorians at any chance you get.
when Archer doesn't buy that, they say, well, it could have been Sirenites. And that's when we start to get what the fuck that is explained to the audience through the Vulcans, who say, listen, there are some crazy Vulcans out there who take a sort of religious monk-like approach to the whole Surak logic thing that's a little bit more ultra-orthodox, and they can be a bit much to deal with. And the way they describe it, it sounds like they're terrorists frothing at the mouth, of course, and could be responsible for the bombing because they're against the high command and their cooperation with humans.
Quick side note, I had talked about the Vulcan logic extremists last episode when we started talking about the capsule for this one. Those guys were actually from Discovery, and they had tried to make an attempt on Spock's life or something. I thought maybe they had some sort of root in whatever was going on here. Completely different. Those Vulcan logic extremists were just stupid character concepts. I really like the direction they go with the, what are they called? Sirenites? Sirenites. I could have gone for a quick throwaway line like, I don't know, maybe it's remnants of the Cabal. We don't know what ever happened to the rest of those fucking Suliban. Maybe it's Grot's people. We've made quite the list of people who fucking hate us. But yeah, Andorians, which Archer's quick to dismiss, or these Sirenites. So they go down to begin their investigations, and we've got Reed and we've got Mayweather poking around, trying to get some data. And there's a comically large piece of rubble covering some stuff up. And Mayweather's like, hey, I'm getting a signature under there. I'm just going to Hulk smash and just fucking...
just lift this giant piece of metal. Because I'm the strongest human alive.
Artie, the strongest man.
I trained in high G when I was a trucker, and that's why I have these coiled death serpents on my arms.
I'm Mayweather, the strongest man in the world. Picks it up, and there's a bandolier full of Ecto Cooler. That's a high C drink from the 80s. And I'm like, oh my God. So the plan here is that we're going to lock on with transporters onto Mayweather and Reed, because trying to beam the bomb out might trigger it. And then Reed's going to get in close and scan this thing, which he thinks is going to trigger it. Which it does, but thankfully, instead of just being an instant explosion, they get a little timer countdown.
Yeah, a little polite 5 seconds to evacuate.
According to Memory Alpha, it's at this point that Travis Mayweather finally loses his soul.
Yes.
He'd made it 4 seasons before venturing into the transporter death machine, and they reanimate his corpse up on Enterprise.
He was the one that was super excited to use it in the pilot. It took him this long. Alas, poor Mayweather, your soul has left.
Alas, poor Forrest, man. Like, it's really weighing on me, the raw deal this guy got. He survived the fucking Xindi attack only to be stabbed in the back and fucking killed on, ally territory.
So when they get back to Enterprise, we see that there are a couple bodies that are in sickbay, which we are not really given any information
At first,
about.
I thought I was reading. I was like, all right, he's in a coma. Good.
But Phlox is there, and he walks through Detective Guilty and Archer the information that they found as a consequence of the investigation that Reed and Mayweather were conducting, and said, well, this bomb had Vulcan DNA on it, and this is the DNA of the person the DNA was found. And T'Pol says, yeah, every single Vulcan has their DNA taken at birth, so everyone can always be identified. That's
how reliable. You feel about
that? Yeah. Big Brother is definitely watching you.
Mm-hmm.
More than that, as we'll find out. And, everyone's excited. Archer says, great. It's this person, T'Pau, apparently. that is a Cyrenite, so that confirms that potential theory. Let's go continue our investigation. And then goes to leave the door. And that's when Detective Guilty goes, actually, you're not going to do any of that at all. You have, in fact, given me everything you were brought here to give me. So it doesn't say that, right? Like that's left as subtext, but he stops the conversation. He says, no, that's enough. You're not allowed to do anything else. We will take this information and continue the investigation. You will do nothing. And that's when you're meant to know, oh, this was clearly a setup. They were brought here to find it. That was the intention. So that they could then give it to the Vulcans, who then could use that as casus belli to go persecute this group they don't like. How interesting. What a tangled web we're weaving here. I like this.
Archer ends up in a cargo bay where we've got all the dead humans that were caught in the blast. They've all got the half-wreath United Earth logo on it, and he goes to one in the middle, which is presumably Forrest, and tries to do a little bit of silent reflection, choking back tears of regret as it was not him caught in the blast, struck about the head and neck area, and whatever, very jealous of whatever sweet head wounds
I'm sorry,
was
Admiral.
able to take.
You just weren't strong enough. If I had been there, I have taken the training in the deepest parts of space. No head trauma scares me.
In comes Suval. And up to this point, Archer's relationship with Suval has been complicated, mostly antagonistic, with a few beacons of hospitality here and there, notably reestablishing diplomatic relations with the Andorians, and Suval trying to warn Archer about the dangers of the Expanse, the Delphic Expanse, and the Event Horizon hellscapes that awaited it. When Archer came back, Suval grilled him about, what was the name of the Event Horizon ship?
The Saleya.
The Saleya, and his decisions there, which Archer went back to old form, got super bent out of shape, attacked Suval, and they were able by the end to kind of fix things. But Archer, being the big racist he always is, has slipped back into anti-Vulcan, anti-Suval mode because his friend Forrest is dead.
And he knows he just got played too. Like, I got. Whatever the hell just happened there, I do not like it.
Mm-hmm.
And so here comes Suval, who clearly was in on it, right? Like, he was there as part of the team, and he's the one who said, yeah, we haven't gone down back to the scene of the crime since it happened. It's your territory. You have to investigate. So he knows.
I don't put him.
He definitely knows. And
I think he might know that shit's fucky, but I don't think he.
Oh, I think he knows that something more than just fucky has happened, because that's why he went down there to talk to him. Because he knew at that point, like, I've got to take him off the leash. We have to fucking do something about this, because this isn't good. I think that's the reason he's there.
I don't know. Maybe you've got access to information I don't, because you've seen the subsequent episodes. But my perception of what's going on here is that, again, he is an employee of the High Command, that he is not privy to their inner machinations, but he is not a fucking idiot. I mean, this is a guy who worked in security services prior to entering the diplomatic corps. So he is a savvy guy.
Right.
I think that he sees that he has been instructed to act in bad faith on some matters, and that he has watched what's happened. Because when I saw Detective Guilty storm off after they were told, no, you cannot go any deeper, that didn't immediately ring the bell as, hey, okay, you read off the script we laid for you, and you said the magic words so we can go persecute our political enemies. But Suval certainly sees what's happening. And while I don't think he's explicitly aware, he sees that shit's dirty. And he gives a great talk to Archer, going over Forrest, what Forrest had wanted, that he died protecting, and guilt. That's the other big part of this. He sees what's happening is bad. He sees that in the end, humans are good and they put their money where their mouth is. Forrest went down, died protecting Suval, because he's a guy that valued the mission and peace and all that other stuff above all else. And this dude's now same deal with like Jeffrey Combs.
Oh, Shran?
Shran, right?
Mhm.
Shran's a good guy. His boss is a piece of shit. Shran has to disobey orders to not be a piece of shit. That's what's happening. I think that's what's happening here. But basically, it's like, hey, okay, Force was a good guy. Force believed in the mission. I see now humanity. You know, I've answered all my own questions that I'd posed to Forrest about what do we do with you guys from here. And basically, shit's fucked up. You need to go down there. You need to get involved. You got to be exactly who you are, which is a guy that ignores whatever the local authorities are making requests of you.
I do like that he said, like, do not let them keep you on this ship. Your answers are down there, and whatever dirt you're about to do, I'm in. I'm in.
That's the other part. It's not just, hey, I can't help you. It's like, you fucking go down there and I got your back. Like Saval just went right into like, shit got real super
Yeah,
quick.
we're ride or die homies now. Like
Apparently.
literally, like that's the man's corpse who saved my life. Whatever you want, it shall be done.
Again, very strong parallels to Shran and realizing that I can either be a good soldier or I can get the tomorrow that I want, and I'm willing to make the sacrifices to realize the future that we need to see here. Watching this episode, I've got a lot of questions now about Vulcan behavior with prior events and whatever shame this guy might be having. They haven't called any attention to it in this episode explicitly, but seeing the way that High Command acts and knowing by the end of this that High Command has a hand in bombing the embassy makes me wonder, like, were the Vulcans not involved in the defense against the Xindi threat because High Command secretly wanted humanity wiped out?
There are so many things that you're going to get to see, my friend. This whole season will be a joy for you. I'll leave it there, except to say that before we close out this act, Koss, this is T'Pol's husband, comes to visit her. But we find out that the visit is really because he can't send a message without it being read. That there are some draconian security measures that are in place on Vulcan. There is no freedom of, of speech. You cannot expect
Vulcan
your mail not to.
Patriot Act is strong.
Yeah, Vulcan Patriot Act is 100%. And so he had to use the excuse that he's married to T'Pol to come up to hand deliver a gift. And it is an Eidic, which we know what that is. You and I know what that is. That's a very common Vulcan thing, but as we will find out, not at this era, apparently. This is something that Vulcans know about, but is not a common symbol that is seen.
Yeah, you don't just have Vulcan mobsters wearing it like gaudy jewelry.
Which I think is like, there are hints throughout the episode, and this is one of them, of clearly the Sirenites are the Vulcans that we know, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're more like the Vulcans we know, and that's going to be the story.
They're
here.
the good guys, essentially.
Right. And that these kind of weird, standoffish, atheist Vulcans are not, are what has been wrong the whole time. And I think that's an extra layer for people like us who were clued in enough that we can catch that vibe early. And again, it starts to put things into context, not only for the plot of this arc, but also everything else we've seen leading up to this, and why, for example, the Vulcans chose to maybe interfere with Earth's technological development, why Henry Archer wasn't allowed to develop his Warp 5 engine on time. Like, there's been an issue here, and maybe it isn't just that this was a race that needed to grow up. Maybe there's something else going on.
So he hands it over to Paul. Paul meets with Archer and says, this is a gift from... Oh, also, the big revelation is that... No, she hasn't revealed yet. She goes to show this thing to Archer, says, I got this. Oh, it seems old. And she's like, well, actually, it's been jammed full of holograms. Look at this. It's a map. This is where my mother's hiding. By the way, she's a Sirenite.
My mother is an apparently Vulcan Al-Qaeda. So, but gave me this map because she wants me to find her.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to have to go find her because she's been giving me shit about my rogue decision-making. And no, it was revealed in the scene prior because her husband tells her, yeah, she's in hiding because she's under persecution. That's also why I had to come up here, is because like they're 6 feet up my ass as well. But hey, Captain, I think this is gonna be our best chance of finding these guys. We're gonna do an away team down here. Put Trips in charge to follow up on the investigation. They had pulled DNA off of that bomb, and Archer says, go back, re-examine it based on my conversation with Suval. Maybe we missed some stuff. And Archer gets on. It's not the exact same outfit he wore for Desert Crossing, but it's close enough.
It's got the rank insignia on his collar, which of course is like a 23rd, 24th century move, which I kind of liked.
The place where these Vulcan pilgrims are hanging out is called the Forge. It's a very dangerous area, which conveniently technology does not work at all. So no phase pistols, tricorders, communicators, transporters, shuttlecraft, nothing. You got to beam down or get down there and go on foot. And luckily, the now ride or die Suval goes, hey, here's a sensor schedule, so the exact moment to beam these guys down where they can slip through our defenses.
And apparently it is not something that a human would be expected to survive. So extremely harsh conditions. Fortunately, he played some rugby in the desert that one time, so he's pretty well prepared.
I hate the fact he brings a ball cap. As someone who's very pale and gets burned very easily, it brings me no joy wearing these fucking dad hats that, I like to lie to myself like, oh, it's like an Alan Grant hat. No, it's a fucking stupid dad hat. But like that wide brim keeps the sun off your neck, off the back of your neck. He's down there with a fucking ball cap on. I'm like, man, you have such a bad sunburn, dude. I hope you got some good space. That's what I need. I needed Phlox to give him a tube of fucking sunblock.
Yeah, here's some SPF 100 because we're on fucking Vulcan. They get down there. I do like that T'Pol.
Professor Disco makes her triumphant return in all white leisure suit.
At least it's consistent. At least this is apparently the shit she wears on like inclement away team missions.
We haven't seen Professor Disco since she kicked the shit out of some Klingons.
Oh, with her Vulcan Kung Fu. Yes.
With the West Texans, yes. Fuck that episode.
And she talks about how, she's not suffering in this environment. Be like, yeah, John, did you remember that my species evolved on this planet? We have special little things about, our eyes and our ability to retain water that allows us to live in a fucking desert. Did you consider that maybe?
Did you forget that I'm immune to everything, including bird flu? You big dumb human. They begin their journey, and all the other times that Archer being stuck on a desert surface has not worked correctly, it goes pretty well for them down there. Meanwhile, back up on the ship, they find an irregularity in the
DNA
sample that they had taken, and they bring in. No, they haven't brought him up yet, Suval, but they go, okay, well, we need. Luckily, the guy, based on some security footage, we see a mysterious hooded figure with a big package that looks like a bomb. It's probably him. Wouldn't you know, the guy at that desk, which is actually the helm from the Prometheus, or is it the Daedalus?
Would have had to have been the Prometheus. Corporal
I think
was somebody we've seen before. Raphael Boza.
No, I'm sorry, it's the Pastor. The security desk in the embassy was previously used as the helm console for the USS Pastor from All Good Things.
Gotcha.
Wouldn't you know, that guy, Ensign so-and-so, he's here, and he's the guy that's got all the head wounds and is comatose. How are we going to find out what he knows? We don't need his body. We just need his mind. And they look at each other, and it seems like they've got a great idea. And the way they looked at each other, I was like, oh, man, tell me that Phlox and Trip, of all people, are about to clone slug this flu.
7 days later, we'll have all the answers we want. So the fact that DNA is planted from the childhood record, I thought was just a great use of Phlox. Phlox also has like the first of several close-ups that I thought was effective. Like this director loves him a close-up, but I think he utilized that quite well. I like that the detail in Phlox's makeup on his face as well as his contacts, and getting that so clearly in a shot like that was very nice. I can see why he decided to do that. But anyway, it's planted because it comes from that source. Phlox was able to suss that out. They arrive at this alternative solution, which is trying to get the memories from this guy who's literally brain damaged and probably won't live. And so there's Saval. Cut back there, it's Saval, and it's Trip, and it's Phlox. And it's like, so we understand that Vulcans apparently know mind magic. Like, kind of a weird conversation we're about to have with you because we barely fucking understand what we're asking for. But we know from our Vulcan coworker / my girlfriend that you guys apparently have psychic powers. Or at least some of you do.
Psychic stuff is well established at this point. You've had the Cenobites, you've seen mind melds. We had Pop Tart Fuckface, which had only Hoshi kept the power crystal on his desk. Maybe she could have, telepathied it out of there. But if you're watching from season 1, you understand what's going on here. You're taking the Vulcan with the biggest stick up his ass that we have seen. You're coming to him and saying, hey, we need you to find us someone who engages in deviant behavior, which is basically akin to gay people with AIDS in the 80s in the US. Like, that's how taboo this thing we're talking about is right now.
Yeah.
And we need you to bring that person here to mind meld a fucking corpse. And Suval's like, no one's going to help us because A, that stuff is taboo as fucking B, even if they were doing it, no one's committing political suicide to go anywhere near this thing. And they're like, well, here's the evidence we have up to this point, and this guy's got the info who can tell us who bombed this thing. And then Suval's like, right, well,
guess I did
what?
Say I was right or die, right? Like, I did say that.
He's like, guess what? I'm actually an infernalist and I have all this magic. Like all that stuff I just said.
That special power.
You know, I don't normally show people my evil magic collection until I kill them, but yeah, I've actually got all these special powers. And that is such a huge moment for me to find out this guy who was former security, super rigid by the book, top shelf diplomat, this dude that's given to Paul shit left and right about thrown in with the humans. And he's going to sit there and reveal that he's like basically doing crack. Not Trillium D crack, but like the most taboo thing available in their society. And it kind of makes sense. Like, again, he's a security guy. That seems like a great interrogation thing. Like a very strong taboo, as though it may be, a very strong ability to have access to. So it's a huge contradiction to his character, but it works so well, and it's such juicy scandal.
Well, we'll find out. Like, there's so much color to just the mind meld part of this episode because there is dialogue later that suggests that Serac taught that all Vulcans are capable of mind melding, which, of course, we know is accurate.
Right.
Based on we've looked into the future. We've seen future Star Trek. So we know it's not actually a rare ability like Trip thinks it is.
No, and you go back to the Cenobite episode, all those guys were doing it.
So what's the truth? Is it something that some people can do? Is it something most people can do? Is it something all people can do? Like this is a fun piece of texture to the episode because clearly that's not information that the Enterprise crew has at all, and it's not even information that Saval, who's our most dependable interlocutor of Vulcan things, knows. So this is very hidden knowledge.
Again, very taboo. Meanwhile, down on the surface, Archer and T'Pol get ambushed by a bear creature.
A bad CG bear cat of some kind.
It's unfortunate that Archer didn't bring any sort of a regular old pistol, maybe one of those slug throwers.
Yeah, archaic just have one AR somewhere in the closet somewhere. Come on.
Here's the weakest shit for this episode. This fucking thing's in its natural habitat. It attacks them. Archer and T'Pol run up a fucking hill. And I'm not talking like a mountain. This is just like a gravel hill.
Pit. Yeah.
And this fucking creature that lives there cannot transverse the natural terrain that it has evolved in, and they're able to avoid it. And then T'Pol's like, I had one of those as a pet and whatever. But eventually it gets called off or scared off by a desert wanderer, which you very quickly realize is one of um, these pilgrims making the journey. And they all decide to band together and walk.
He calls himself a Rev, which apparently means desert wind. He is much more like a classic Vulcan looking guy. He's kind of wearing the semi archaic clothes, and looks more windswept, more like you saw Spock maybe at the beginning of Star Trek the motion picture. Having gone through his cleansing of emotions. His skin is much more like green bronzed. His haircut's more 60s. He's supposed to invoke probably the image of a TOS Vulcan, in my opinion, which is, of course, what they're building towards. So just there's that visual matches with the intention.
Really like this guy's portrayal.
Absolutely. Very interesting. Very
Very
philosophical.
introspective. Yeah. He suspects that these guys that T'Pol and Archer are holding back information. And eventually confronts him, hits him with some logic questions because Archer had told him that T'Pol was his teacher and he's just trying to learn about things. And right when they start making a connection and, they're about to start opening up, exposing what their agenda is, I like the line. He calls them liars, and then Archer basically calls him a liar, and he goes, Vulcans cannot lie. And Archer's like, well, I've worked with the High Command, and I can tell you that Vulcans can cheat and lie with the best of them.
Yeah, he lays out very clearly and very quickly that he is not a fan of the current political structure and considers the Vulcan High Command to be not Vulcan like, insufficiently correctly Vulcan. And it's definitely a religious angle. There's a pretty funny moment at the beginning of the whole desert process of going into the forge where T'Pol is explaining that there's no writings that actually exist from when Serac, the father of Vulcan logic, existed to really be authoritative as to his intentions or teachings, which leads a lot of copies that were made later to sort of be open to interpretation to what they mean. And Archer just starts laughing and he's like, you find this funny? And he just says, I find this familiar. And that's where it's left. But it's one of the few clear references to Earth religions I think I've ever seen on Star Trek, of Archer reflecting on, like, I've heard this story before.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let me crack open some 20th century books on Muslims and Jews and Christians for you. let you see how that worked out for us.
So right as they're about to bond and start opening up, the aforementioned worst CGI storm since fucking what was that one? Hoshi's transporter adventure.
Oh, when she's
Vanishing
stuck in
point.
that 6 seconds. Yeah.
And the storm blows over and they got to run away from a dust cloud that is shooting lightning out of it. And I'm sorry, an acidic dust cloud that is shooting lightning bolts.
The lightning bolts are the least threatening lightning bolts I've ever seen. A little like pew, pew.
Whatever, they still get their kill.
They do. They run for their lives. They get to a convenient cave. They put a bunch of convenient rocks in front of the convenient cave, and now they are
Those
safe.
Vulcans are very strong the way they just pick those boulders. I
It's
thought
true.
for a moment that might have been Travis Mayweather, and they're throwing boulders about like it's made out of foam. The guy ascertains correctly that Archer is responsible for the damages to Pajem. I love the mileage they get out of Pajem, the monastery.
He likes him because he is responsible.
Right,
That's
which
the
Archer
key.
wasn't sure how he was going to play out that first and said, it's not you that destroyed Pajem. It was the High Command that defiled Pajem and turned it into, a listening post instead of the religious shrine that it was supposed to be. Guess what? You got my favor now. I'm going to start laying some facts on you. I liked the background information that High Command's initial function was just to handle Vulcan space exploration, and
Right.
that
And
it
then it mutated over time. Very natural, right? Like that there was a period where I thought this was an interesting way that they phrased it. There was a final battle against the army that wanted to follow under the Raptor's wings to continue in barbarity. And then after that is how they reorganized their society, and that the High Command was responsible for space travel, but it just slowly took everything else over.
um, there's some deeper conversation. I notice Archer, says like, well, hey, the Vulcans think that you guys are terrorists, and basically, says, that you're corrupt and bad or whatever. And like the dude laughs it off. Did you catch that?
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
actually a chuckle.
Little flash of just a tiny bit, a little bit of emotion. Yeah, I
How
think
do you feel about that?
I know what happens next, so I wasn't surprised at all.
Hmm. Um, Starts laying down more groundwork that he knows where T'Pol's mom is. He's going to take him. He agrees to take him over there. And then he starts laying down more of the philosophy or religion that basically their Vulcan Jesus discovered logic, that there is a strong spiritual component that has been ignored, that mind melds are everybody's ability and right, whether they are religious or not, that it should not be a suppressed technique, and that there's a belief that basically a Vulcan can transfer their solar consciousness out of their body to preserve their essence or spirit, assuming, of course, they don't go through a transporter, right?
Of course.
And that's all cool because that's basically the Genesis plot line of Spock.
Yeah, yeah. This is something that we know is true, right? Like we know that what he's telling us, we've seen an example of that working in Star Trek, but even then it was seen as kind of a long shot, right? Like that, yeah, you're whatever the Vulcan spirit or soul is that could be transferred is possible, but this is something that doesn't always happen, right? Like this is an exceptional thing, and it is thought that Sirach's Katra is somewhere, right? And was taken and protected. And of course, we did see a little bit of archaeology earlier, so the pieces start to come together.
And that basically anybody who mind melds with someone who has encountered Sirach's Katra gets the enlightenment, right?
Yeah, you become
Uh,
the Buddha.
Meanwhile, up on Enterprise, Suval has conducted the mind meld with the comatose ensign. He's able to review the footage. And wouldn't you know it, the hooded individual was no less than dun dun dun
Detective Guilty.
Detective Guilty.
You son of a bitch.
You son of a bitch. They call up the president of the High Council and Detective Guilty, confront him and say, hey, listen, we've got evidence that it was a Vulcan within the High Command that has perpetrated this. It's not these logic cult people that you're trying to push us onto to persecute unfairly. We've got hard evidence. We've got observational data. Well, let us see this. We want to counter interrogate. We want to see the tapes. Well, that's not possible because he's a corpse, and we used a mind meld, and it was your old buddy Suval who did it. Suval fesses up, and he makes the accusation and says, "I saw you, Detective Guilty. You're the bad guy."
Yeah,
And things do not go well from there.
it was interesting to me that like Saval clearly is very upset about this, right? Like he is so angry over the fact that he knows that there is something really fucky going on, that his gambit is to purposefully provoke the president of Vulcan and the chief law enforcement officer in an accusation so that he can then be called into the carpet so we can see if everyone else has been compromised or not.
And that
Like, okay,
goes,
clearly there's a conspiracy afoot. Now I have to force you to put me in front of everybody so I can kind of sniff it out and see what the fuck is going on.
and this is what lends credence to my earlier belief that he knows things are wrong, but he doesn't know the exact details. And when he gets into the office secretary's head during that mind meld and sees Detective Guilty's face, like, it jolts him.
Yeah, it hurts him. Yeah.
So there it all is laid out, and whatever he might have thought was going on, it's way fucking worse. So they storm off. They say, the president's like, that's it, Suval, you're done. I'm going to revoke your position, and you're going to be in, like, I'm going to destroy your social credit rating.
You're going to have to come in front of the High Council, on which he's like, yes, good. That's
They
what I
fuck
want.
off. And I like the interaction between Trip and Suval here, where he's like, listen, man, you can't go down there. You're walking into a setup. How about you actually trust us and, let us be involved, and, like, we can find another way on this. Keep in mind, Suval and Trip go way back as far as Suval and Forrest, Suval and Archer, and Suval is Action Grandpa, right? These guys were there at basically the inception of the Warp 5 engine, the test platforms, and Trip certainly has no love for Suval. So this is a cool bro up moment.
It is. And it is almost like Suval like the way he kind of like leaves the conversation and says peace and long life, right? Here he's like, okay, listen, like you don't think I trust humans? Like, I did a mind meld for you, bro. Like, I just did a mind meld on a brain damaged human and accused
A
the
brain
FBI
damaged
director of Vulcan in front of the president of Vulcan of being Osama bin Laden. And you're
Yeah.
saying I don't trust you?
A
Okay.
brain dead, a mind meld on a brain dead human. That's like you fucking a dead cat. Like, that's a level of taboo we're talking about, right?
That's interesting. There's like a little bit of, in my opinion, there was a little bit of, I don't want to say resentment, but like, okay, like you don't think you humans sometimes don't pick up on things. I guess. Yes, I trust
I
you.
read the
But
scene as, again, that, like, Trip trying to protect Suval, and this being the moment where Suval is like,
it could
it,
be, yeah. Then he's
I'm
like
going
recognizing that, bro. Like, hey, you're trying to help me out.
I'm going all the way on this. Like, I'm not, I should be dead. The human protected me, and I am now dedicating my life to protecting you guys. And I'm willing to walk into the dragon's lair to ride this thing out and see what good I can do. It's what the Perseus moment was from the Soong trilogy we just watched, only it makes sense because this guy's got the ability to actually do some good in this dangerous situation he's walking into. Meanwhile, down on the surface, they thought they were safe behind these rocks they toss here, but this is the worst storm they've ever seen. Nobody's ever seen a storm this bad, and they get up to try and reinforce it, and it turns out that the name of this episode isn't The Forge, it's Shocky's Revenge. Our good lightning bolt friend from, was it Deck 15?
Yeah, from Deck 12, Haunting of
Deck
Deck
12.
12. Yeah,
Haunting of Deck 12. It's a haunting of the Vulcan desert. Shocky's pissed. They tried to block him out, and he's just lashing out blindly. He zonks to Paul pretty good, but then he really gets his fangs in on Erval.
and Arev goes.
Whatever.
Yeah. Listen, you not knowing people's names, you're still calling
Vulcan,
Saval
Vulcan,
Suval.
Vulcan Apostle, whatever.
Yeah, Vulcan John the Baptist gets zapped, and he's dying, and in his dying moments, he slaps Archer with some face touching. He's clearly done some kind of quick and dirty mind melding, and when they come to, he's dead. There's his jacket's been kind of brought above his face, and he's Archer is no real worse for the wear, and they're going to continue their journey. And as
I
they
like, what was it? We watched an episode, and someone had been getting mind melded. It was to Paul when she was mind melded against her will, and like she was in that coma, and they're like, yeah, there's like stress fractures on her face bones. Those are not enjoyable. That's not a deep tissue massage. That's a bone cracking event. But when you're Jonathan Archer, you are
that's a bonus.
you are emphasis on the bone. All right. You are well
And
fortified to head trauma.
maybe he's so well fortified that they try to mind meld with him, and it's like it's impenetrable. Like, all I feel is traumatic brain injury and scar tissue. What's going on in
All
here?
I
There's
feel is
barely any brain working at all. It's like,
all I feel is something digging into my head. Oh my god, he's that erect. Let me move to the side here more. This is ridiculous. It's happening. I like when Archer wakes up and he's like, "Is the storm still going?" And it's like, "Bitch, you see the fucking sunlight coming through these rocks behind me." Is Shockey blindly lashing out in rage at people in here? Like, yeah, it's done. Archer's a different man. We know exactly what's happened, right? We watched
right?
it happen with Bone and Spock. He's got an emotional passenger. He's got a Johnny Silverhand right now, right?
He sure does. They put the biochip in him.
And boy, Scott Bakula's portrayal of this is great. We've got some simple callback stuff where they get out. Archer seems to know a little bit more than he should about the area. Paul tries to give him some water. He's like, I should be good for a couple days, which is a callback to her refusing his water earlier. No, I'm fine. Like, no, you're not. You're a fucking human. Oh, yeah, you're right. Very clearly, this guy has two thought processes going. He leads Paul over to a holographic wall. They walk through a fake, like it's the fucking where the Batmobile should be shooting out of here, right? They walk in there. Archer goes, just let it happen or
Don't
something.
resist.
Don't resist.
And Paul's like, "What do you mean?" And then suddenly a bunch of other Vulcan ne'er-do-wells come out of the shadows.
One of them grabs him by the arm, and she's like, ah.
And to be continued. Great,
That was
great
such a
ending.
hard to be continued to get around to, man. That was a rough one. I wanted to go next. That's why I wanted to make sure we got through this entire episode. I can't go
Yeah,
2
we can't
weeks
break it
without.
up. Yeah. No, I wanted to get it all done too. I don't think I could speak highly enough of the acting in this. I think everyone turns in a good performance. Even Reed's one scene is somewhat tolerable as he's somewhat fatalistically, talking about this bomb possibly killing them, and they wouldn't even know it. Right down to Archer is great. As his scene with Saval amongst the coffins and the way that he's in pain because he knows he's been manipulated. Saval, he's trying to come to terms with. He knows he's been part of whatever has happened up to this point, but then detects relatively quickly that he is there to assist him. And they work through all of that, and it really relies on two veteran actors being able to portray that energy in a way that grips you. That makes you vested in what's going to happen next, keeps you on the edge of your seat, keeps you wanting more. And that's what this episode does a great job of. Every single actor, every single scene, they really tried to keep you on the edge of your seat.
I really wonder what Gary Graham could have done with Riker.
Yeah, that would have been a much different take. Would have been a much more veteran officer take, not a bon vivant,
And it makes me wonder, what would Frakes be in the Suval capacity? And we've seen what Frakes looks like on screen. Well, I guess he's not that old. That's not like director Frakes. That's still,
Still middle-aged Frakes.
Again, I didn't feel any of the budget restraints. It's just great, compelling stuff, great intrigue. It feels vaguely undiscovered country-ish in terms of what's going on here. The behavior of the Vulcans is right up there with your run-of-the-mill Romulans. And it's a great showcase for, again, all the themes that they had laid out and things that we've discussed about Vulcan leading up to this. And some cool lines they're drawing in the sand between the religious and the rejectionists that are currently leading the government. So I'm looking forward to going into season 4, episode 8, which will be Awakening. And that is Archer and T'Pol encounter the Searnites, the radical group supposedly responsible for terrorist bombing of Vulcan. Can't wait to see her mom come out, have to eat some shit.
Oh,
For all
so much.
for
Oh,
all
Mom, you were in Al-Qaeda all along, huh?
You want to give me shit about not wanting to go through with my prearranged marriage, you fucking terrorist? Written by Andre Baramis, directed, Roxanne Dawson.
Will it get sexy? Check Y or N.
Check Y or very Y. How much baby oil can we fit into one episode on Vulcan? I wonder. It's very hot. This
Very
might be
dry too. It's a dry heat.
this might be like her revenge for them putting her through that Malorn episode where she had to be greased up with a tank top on.
God, the Malorn episode, that was like her showing off how much she worked out, though. You
That
know,
was somebody showing that off because that's
Yeah.
not her directing it.
Well, still, she did so many push-ups, and we will push up into Roxanne's directorial efforts next week.